Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Bielski, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and this road trip just continues to get worse and worse for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll discuss, could the Pens season be on the brink of absolute disaster after another loss to a bottom feeder in the Western Conference? And then one NHL insider believes the Penguins have the perfect trade partner. Who is that trade partner, and who could we see potentially coming to the Penguins in the next handful of weeks? And what is going on with Fenway Sports Group and the rumors of a partial sale of the Pittsburgh Penguins? We'll dive into all of that and more on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Let's kick things off with, obviously, the Penguins and what we've seen on the ice, because the last handful of games have not been pretty. Let's just face facts. Outside of Buffalo, which was a good win against the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and LA, which is the one win that you can kind of put your feather in your cap if you're the Penguins, they have been abysmal on this road trip, dropping to 2-4 after a 2-1 loss at the Shark Tank last night to the San Jose Sharks. Not only that, yesterday they get news that Evgeni Malkin is going to be out week to week with a lower body injury, according to head coach Mike Sullivan. Malkin collided with Chandler Stevenson in Saturday's game against the Seattle Kraken. And now you look at the Pens, and it's starting to feel eerily similar. Horwat. Last year, if you look back, Jake Gensel gets injured on Valentine's Day. The Penguins then, as a result, look disinterested for weeks on end, end up going 5-10-2 through the trade deadline and dropping to 13th in the Eastern Conference. I mean, that is starting to feel like this. So my question to you is, could this just be a repeat of last year before the trade deadline, where the Penguins free fall into nothingness before they turn it around late in the season?
No, there's no turning this one around, I think. I think this one's dead in the water. It's time to put a fork in this team. Not good, very not good. If people want to have the hope and desire, maybe there is some turnaround ahead, I just don't see it whatsoever. The hot streak they had in December maybe would have, added some spice to the season, made things look up a little bit, made things interesting. But now, what is it, 5 wins since the Christmas break? We're about to enter February, and the pace is just abysmal. They dummied the Sharks last year, 10 to whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't get me wrong. The Sharks are a marginally better team this year, but not much. And 2-1. I mean, you can argue, it was a close game. Maybe they would have had a chance, this, that, the other. It's still the Sharks, man. It is. The Sharks are only going to score 2 goals on you. That's about it. It's all they really have done this year. You got to score more than that. Period. This team is not doing the thing this year. Listen, I know we all had our feelings and we all had our discussions about the fire sale that was reported last week. Boy, does this team need one. Screw it. Like, who cares if what the report said? They need one. It's getting ugly. That doesn't include Sidney Crosby, by the way. He's staying no matter what. Everyone knows this. We'll discuss more things later. But for now, just this team, that's it. Just stick a fork in it. It's just about over. And, I don't know if there are too many bright spots to look forward to for the rest of this season. There's some bobbleheads still to be handed out to fans. There's still some. Is Crosby nearing any milestones? I mean, I would say Malkin.
Yeah, he's always nearing a milestone, and Mike Sullivan's also nearing a milestone as well, I believe. So there's milestones, like there has been the last 3 seasons with this team. There's bobbleheads and off-ice things and dollar dog night coming up. Sure, there's reasons to be minimally excited, but the product on the ice is not one of them right now. Nope. I mean, they have now lost 3 straight to the Ducks, Kraken, and Sharks. If you look at the standings, that is 13th, 12th, and 16th in the West, respectively. And that is where I go with, could it be a repeat of last year? Could we see a resurgence after this bottoming out here right ahead of the trade deadline? Yeah, you could. You could see them go on a stretch like they did between Thanksgiving and Christmas. But the problem is they have not proven over time to be a consistent hockey team, right? What did we say at the outside of this show? They were great. Best game all season, beating a very, very good LA Kings team that just does not lose at home. And the Penguins went in there without their leading goal scorer, and they whooped them. How do they respond after that? 3 straight losses to 3 of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. The consistency is not there, and the only time that they are consistent is when they're consistently bad. And here's the thing. Do I have faith that there could be a chance that Malkin comes back and all of a sudden they rattle off a stretch of 8 wins in 14 games or something like that, like they did last season? Yeah, I'm never going to rule it out with those players, because if they just catch their footing for 2 weeks, they can go on a little bit of a run. The problem being, last year, that horrendous stretch, that bottoming out, dropped them to 13th in the East as a result. They're already 15th in the Eastern Conference right now. They are 3-8-3 in their last 14 games. They are 2-7, 7 regulation losses in their last 9. And they're one of the worst scoring teams in the National Hockey League. Going into yesterday, they were 27th in scoring in the month of January. And I'm certain that it had to have dropped because they only scored 1 goal again for the 4th time on this road trip. They're just not a good hockey team right now, and it's costing them in the standings, and it's costing them really attention, because right now I feel like there's more attention on a Paul Skeens rookie card than there is on a Pittsburgh Penguins team that is actually in season.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Their minus 40 goal differential is the worst in the East, 3rd worst in the league, I think. Behind, mind you, the team you just lost to in San Jose, who have the worst at a minus 57. That's not good. That's very much not good. 3-game losing streak to 3 of the worst teams in the West, where you scored a combined 3 goals. You got shelled 11-3 in those 3 games. The Ducks don't score, and they put up 5 on you. Seattle's not as good as they once were. They put up 4 on you. And again, San Jose is still a trash fire. Or not trash fire. They
lost
better.
6 games in a row going into last night, and 9 of 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I forgot the Sharks were also pretty poor going. And they blew a very big lead, not in the not too distant past, too.
Yeah.
And mind you, again, last season, you put 10 up on them. They gave up 10 goals 2 games in a row. And you go out there and lay an egg. Again, I think it was 10-2 that game. Well, you've proven that you can score more than 2 goals against this team, but you didn't. You got 1. Everything has just been just I don't know how to put it. It's been very bad for the Penguins. They're starting goalies in the AHL. They're losing to the Sharks. They're losing to the Ducks. They have the worst goal differential in the East. Sidney Crosby's putting up points at a time, 1 at a time.
Yeah.
Malkin's now on IR on a week-to-week basis. Who knows if Carlson and Letang are actually safe in this organization. Everyone is on edge about who might be traded soon. It's all just in a fast car moving downhill.
Yeah, I will say this. I still believe that Letang and Carlson are safe in the organization.
They
and I know
likely
some people don't want to hear that, but I mean, for one, they both have full no movement clauses, and for 2, there is nothing to suggest that they want to be out of here. So, I mean, when you look at that, I highly doubt that they're in any danger of being sent out of here. But I just went and looked it up. The Penguins have dropped to 28th after their 1-goal performance yesterday against the San Jose Sharks. So again, you look at this matched with the fact that Evgeni Malkin is now going to be out, at least you would have to imagine the next 6 games. And he's your 4th highest point scorer. Now, he only has 10 points in his last 20 games, but he is your 4th highest point scorer with 34 points on the season. So again, it's not only the fact that they've struggled, it's the fact that the body language is starting to look very similar to what we saw last year, which led to them losing countless games on end. Like I said, 5-10-2 from the moment against the left through the trade deadline.
3-7-0 right now in their last 10. It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's been a rough stretch, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. They have 1 last game remaining on this season-long 7-game road trip that has just been absolutely horrendous. We'll have to wait and see what happens in Utah on Wednesday night. Let's move over and talk about a bit of news that came out yesterday, and it was alluded to before the weekend. Timing there was a little weird, a little suspicious, but this is eventually the news that came out, is that the Pittsburgh Penguins ownership group, Fenway Sports Group, is expecting to sell a minority stake in the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the Penguins are for sale, Horwat. They're for sale, sort of, kind of. I wouldn't sound the alarms, right? According to Kevin Weeks and Emily Kaplan of ESPN, FSG intends to explore potential sale of a minority ownership stake. That's exactly the wording used by Kevin Weeks in his breaking news video yesterday on X. Rob Rossi confirmed these rumors of The Athletic, saying, quote, a source in the Penguins organization confirmed that Fenway intends to retain the majority ownership stake of the Penguins and emphasized that there are no concerns about FSG's interest in the Penguins moving forward. So, Horwat, your thoughts on FSG adding to their ownership group in a minority stake?
My overall thoughts are nothing's really going to change. Just a new name's going to be signing some checks. That's really about it. Nothing's going to change on the ice. Nothing's going to change in the front office. Nothing's really going to change in anything you see, especially considering it's not a controlling stake. So really, it's just going to be a company or a group of people coming in, slapping their name on some things and collecting money. That's all it is. It's the Fenway bought the Penguins for $900 million in 2021. Every team in the NHL is now worth over $1 billion. So they're seeing profit margins and they're just going to try and capitalize. They did it with Liverpool not too long ago.
Yeah, I thought I saw something that as part of his article. Yes.
Yeah, I thought I saw something that I could be wrong. The FSG might be interested in buying the Celtics. I don't know. They're just expanding their reach. There's a lot going on in FSG. It really doesn't mean too much in the grand scheme of things in terms of what fans will see change, because it's going to be really nothing other than maybe someone cool gets in there and we could just say, hey, this person, like LeBron James, hey, this person's now part owner of the Penguins.
I mean, he is part owner of the Penguins. So I mean, that story died down really quickly once the Penguins started missing the postseason. But no, this is not a big deal to me. This is another way to make money for the organization. It's the same thing as, jersey patches on the chest. It's the same thing as jersey stickers on the helmets. The same thing as the moving and changing advertisements on the boards. It's another way to make money. Now they're going to continue the fact that they're going to continue to retain the majority ownership stake, that told me, okay, this is a story. It is a story, but it is a very, very small story in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I understand fans haven't been happy. FSG bought the Penguins back in 2021. Hasn't been very fruitful on the ice since they took over. No playoff series wins. Obviously, that dates back to the previous ownership group. No playoffs since 2022. That's new, though. Hurling towards another missed postseason, as we talked about in the opening segment. So I understand. A lot of people are not happy with Fenway Sports Group. But I will say, it's not like they haven't done anything good for the Penguins. I understand that everybody's used to kind of a small family-style ownership group when there was Burkle and Lemieux, because Lemieux was there all the time. FSG's hands off. They own the Penguins. They own Liverpool. They own the Red Sox. And like you said, there are rumors that they want to own the Boston Celtics as well. So there's a lot going on at the head organizational level. What they essentially did was say, Kyle Dubas, you are the guy for the Penguins. So if you want to know where they're at as far as appearance-wise, as far as public-facing wise, it's Kyle Dubas. He is the guy for FSG. Now, I will say, like I said, they have made improvements off the ice. New scoreboard's been nice. That new sound system's been nice. The wholesale arena upgrades have been nice. That's Fenway Sports Group. That's Fenway. On the ice, you can give them credit for allowing the Penguins to spend to the cap when they're nowhere near contention. And we knew they were going to be nowhere near contention, and yet they still spent to the salary cap this past offseason. You can give them credit for going to bat for Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, especially the latter two, whenever their contracts were up after 2022. Some people won't. Some people will say they should have cut the cord back then. But a lot of people, if you like the fact that you're seeing the big three potentially finish their entire careers together in Pittsburgh, you have to give credit to FSG on that one. Also, they stepped in and fired Hextall and Burke after the 2023 disaster. How many Steelers fans right now are saying, I wish that the Rooneys would take a page out of FSG's book and fire the people that are sending them in the opposite direction that they want to be going? So I will give them credit where credit is due. They haven't been awful owners. They've been hands-off, which is new, and the team on the ice hasn't been good. But at the same time, when you buy a dynasty in its closing days, I don't think there's very much they could have done from an organizational level to change what we're seeing on the ice today.
Yeah, there was nothing much they could do. For what it's worth, I mean, they're hands-off, yeah. Every now and again, before he left, Dave Beeston was around every so often, from what I remember seeing. It's kind of turned into a bit of it. Like you said, the arena's great. That's always been a driving factor for Penguins fans. They haven't been filling it as much recently, but
which
again,
might have led to this, right?
Yeah,
it's a way to make money. If you're not making the money in ticket sales, which this is a gate-driven league, you got to figure out other ways. And they certainly can't raise concession prices anymore, because if they do, then they're really not going to have any ticket sales.
No. I mean, part of it too is, listen, everyone knows Pittsburgh fans will show up to any sporting event if the team is good. They will. They sold PNC Park out for the playoffs whenever those 4 games happened. And even in the couple of puttering years following, there was still at least a decent amount of fans at PNC Park. And every time there's a big giveaway or a big thing going on at a Pirate game, that place is sold out still. So there are plenty of sports fans in Pittsburgh that want to see and are willing to spend to see good teams. Penguins right now aren't a good team, and it's showing through the attendance numbers. And it's been fading slowly. And if a new couple of names gets in there, maybe they don't have controlling stake, but maybe a couple of words get thrown around. Hey, here's how we can fix this. Here's how we can fix that. Suggestions, and who knows? Maybe things turn around under different new ownership / partnership, whatever it may be. For what it's worth, Mario Lemieux is still a part owner. He just isn't around as much. Mm-hmm. It's way more hands off, and we know Fenway is around, but again, like you said, a bit more hands off than Mario was. Nothing much will change. It's up to the people. It's up to the team to get good again for people to show up.
Is this the final? That's not how I wanted to phrase that. Is this how Pittsburgh finally gets Mark Cuban in on a sports team? Like, is this how Mark Cuban finally says, all right, I'll throw a little money there. That way I can just sit up against the glass. Does that do anything for you? Do you want Mark Cuban to be involved in Pittsburgh sports?
I don't know, actually.
I mean, again, it's minority stake, so it's not going to change much. It's not.
Again, it is just like we said, new names that are going to be on the checks. New names that'll be maybe this is a big.
They're probably
name
not even going to be on the checks.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know if Mark Cuban has any interest in owning another team. To be fair, I mean, people have been begging him to buy the Pirates forever, and even he's going, I'm not doing that. And like you mentioned, Pittsburgh is so used to families and singular people owning the teams until Fenway came along, and for better or worse, as much as they don't want Bob Nutting around, it's a family business there. Man, it'll be interesting to see what names they pull in. That's all it is to it. There's no much. We went way longer on this than I think we expected.
Yeah, and it always has to happen. We talk about ownership of sports teams in the city of Pittsburgh. The Rooneys are going to get brought up, and you certainly know that Bob Nutting's going to get brought up. But let's move on from that. The Penguins, well, they're going to have an interesting trade deadline season. I think most people are expecting them to sell, but one NHL insider says maybe they'll buy. Trade season's heating up. Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet says Buffalo could be a good trade partner for the Pittsburgh Penguins. On his 32 Thoughts blog last week said, quote, with all of the noise around the Penguins, I believe they have interest in some of Buffalo's younger NHL-ready prospects. It fits what they want. If you go over to Frank Saravalli's trade board of Daily Faceoff, there are 3 Buffalo Sabres currently on his trade board that also fit what the Pittsburgh Penguins have sort of been looking for here since they started this new plan in March. Number 7 on the big board, Dylan Cousins, center. Number 9 on the big board, Bowen Byram, left-handed defenseman that already has a Stanley Cup to his name. And number 14 on the big board, Jack Quinn, a right winger that is still trying to kind of find his footing at the NHL level. So with that in mind, Horwat, of those 3, which one would you be most interested in seeing the Penguins go after?
Of those 3, I'm going to go with Bowen Byram. I think the left side of the defense is where not where the most help is needed, but where things are a bit rocky because Marcus Pettersson's probably out at some point this year. They're going to try and do something with Ryan Graves probably. Matt Grzelcyk might be gone. I mean, those are 3 you're starting left side defensemen right there. That's a whole left side. You're going to need a new face in there that can be a bit more of a long-term fixture. And I know he's in the final year of an RFA deal and will need probably a raise from his 3.85. But generally, I'd say of those 3 names, that's the one you go for because Cousins is locked in for another quite a few years.
5 years after this one.
Yeah, at $7.1 million. Again, he's 23, so it's not like it's a bad contract or a bad deal. He might live up to it. And might even live up to it in Buffalo. Who knows how that goes. But I think it being such a long contract is what makes it not fit the quote-unquote Penguins agenda for what Kyle is looking for. And as for Jack Quinn, also in the final year of, I believe, his rookie deal, coming up RFA, 23 years old, under $1 million right now, but kind of still looking for his footing. And the Penguins are plentiful when it comes to forwards who are budding NHLers, could play in the NHL one day. So maybe you don't need to fill that role necessarily with a Jack Quinn type, although it is exactly what Kyle Dubas is looking for. Who knows? But I would say for now, at least, Bowen Byram, I think, intrigues me the most. It's weird that he's bounced around. He's a really good player. But we'll see. I'd say of those 3, that's one I would have the most interest in. And I'll throw Peyton Krebs in there just because depth centers are always nice, especially at his age.
Yeah, how many former Vegas Golden Knights picks are the Penguins going to acquire this year? You got Cody Glass, now you're throwing in Peyton Krebs. Who knows? Maybe they'll swing something for trying to think of another Vegas draft pick, and I'm coming up blank. Maybe a Zach Whitecloud, but he's still in Vegas. No, when I look at this list and these 3 specifically taking out Peyton Krebs, Jack Quinn is the one that makes the most sense, right? Mm-hmm. He kind of fits the mold of a Cody Glass, Phil Tomasino, a guy who's 23 years old, who doesn't cost a lot, who's not going to cost a lot whenever he signs as an RFA this summer, and you can give him a fresh start. But again, if it's who I'm most interested in, I agree with you. It's Bowen Byram. The fact that he's only 23 years old, he's been in the league for a long time, and the fact is the only reason he's on this list is because he's a left shot. It was curious why Buffalo went out and acquired him in the first place, because he's a left-handed defenseman, and they've drafted 2 left-handed defensemen first overall in recent memory with Rasmus Dahlin and with Owen Power. So you're already paying those guys. They're your first-round picks. They're not going to be the odd man out. It's just going to end up being Bowen Byram, who they acquired for Casey Middlestat at last year's deadline. And you look at Byram, the kid's a phenomenal skater. Maybe, just maybe, he's a young Marcus Pettersson replacement. Maybe not as good, maybe not as refined right now. But again, he's 23 years old. And as we've always said, defensemen more often than not take longer to develop. Byram's been developing in the NHL, and he's had some very, very good stretches. There has been a bit of an injury history, but if you look at the last 2 seasons, he's remained relatively healthy. So that doesn't really concern me. I think if you pair him with Owen Pickering, you have a very good young left side that you can look towards the future with Byram being 23 and Pickering being 20. And then you still have Emil Pianiniemi, who's maturing and moving forward. And then you can still backload the prospect pool. That's what it does. It gives you time to backload the prospect pool with left shot defensemen, even though you also really need right shot defensemen, because outside of Harrison Brunick, you really, and I guess you could throw Jack St. Ivany in there, you really don't have very much.
No, you don't. But it is important to kind of fill that prospect cupboard as well as you can. And who knows? I think the Sabres went out and got Byram because they really thought this season, at least, maybe not last year when they got him, but this 24-25 season was supposed to be way different for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked like they had the lineup that could do it. They looked like they built something pretty strong there. And just Buffalo happened again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they thought they were loading up with Bowen Byram, and really that is a way to load up. If you look at that left side of Dahlin, Power, and Byram, likely one of those guys is playing the right side, because how are any of those three going to go on the third pairing? They're just not. But it's, obviously things have not worked out in Buffalo, so we're having these discussions of, well, who's going? Which of these very good young players is going? And I wouldn't be shocked to see Byram somewhere else. I wouldn't be shocked to see Cousins somewhere else. He's been on the trade block for so long. Mm-hmm. And Jack Quinn, you're right, does fit the mold of what the Penguins have been doing perfectly. But the most interesting one is Bowen Byram.
Yeah, now I do want to talk about Dylan Cousins here for a minute. Like you mentioned, 5 years remaining with $7.1 million per season on his deal. That's a lot to eat if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins. But again, he's 23 years old. The one thing about Dylan Cousins is he came into the league. He had a really good year in 2022-23 where he scored 68 points. He scored 31 goals, and everybody said, all right, he's arrived. He is a piece in Buffalo, a bona fide piece. He's been slowly declining since. I mean, last year, his numbers went down. This year, he's on pace for his numbers to once again drop point total-wise between the last two. So, again, I don't know if part of that is playing in Buffalo, but I think gone are the days of saying, well, if he comes to Pittsburgh, it's a better environment. It really isn't. I mean, Buffalo is in dead last in the East. The Penguins are a notch above them. Yeah, they have about 7 points of a buffer zone, but they're heading in the opposite direction. Buffalo is a young team trying to find their footing. Pittsburgh's an old team trying to hold on to the ledge. Like, does bringing him here substantially change anything for Dylan Cousins? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I think gone are the days of saying, like, with confidence, hey, if you bring him to Pittsburgh and you put him next to Crosby and you put him next to Malkin, he's going to figure it out. Have we seen kind of bumps in play from Cody Glass and Phil Tomasino? Yes. But have we seen them bump and play to the level where, all of a sudden, these guys are bona fide top six guys because they had that capability, they had that pedigree, and they've unlocked it in Pittsburgh? No. They played good hockey. Cody Glass still has 3 goals. Phil Tomasino is playing well on the third line, but he is a third liner. It's not like they're reaching their fullest potential in Pittsburgh anymore. The only thing I will say with Cousins, and why I would probably bump him higher on my total list, not just this list of 3, but my total list of trade targets for the Penguins to bring in young players who are in need of a fresh start, is he's played center and he's had success at center. And right now, if you're looking at the writing on the wall, we kind of briefly touched on it earlier when talking about Malkin's injury. I think the Penguins could use a second line center next year. I'm just not sure about Evgeni Malkin. Whenever he signed that 4-year extension, the biggest question was, well, if he can stay healthy, we think he'll be good. This injury, fortunate that it's not more severe, but a knee injury at 38, do we expect him to be able to bounce back the rest of the season and get to the highest level? He wasn't at his highest level when he went out, right? 10 points in his last 20 games. That's a 40-point pace over 82 for Evgeni Malkin. That is far below the expectation that's been set over the last decade plus. Injuries piling up potentially. On pace for 56 points in 77 games, which is a 10-point deduction from the year before. And he's going to be 39 years old next year. I think that the time has come, and the time has probably passed, to start looking for a second-line center. And if Dylan Cousins falls in your lap, it might just be an option to say, hey, G, you can move to wing. It's probably going to do you better in your last season.
No kidding. At least do him better in his last season. Even if it's first line wing with Crosby, maybe.
I mean, if you end up trading Raquel and don't replace him like you didn't replace Gensel, then what else are you going to do?
Yeah, no kidding. In reality, the time to grab another center would have been when they signed Malkin to the extension. Find another one that can be the third line center that has the ability to move up to second if need be. And they just haven't done that. this time around, when you're going into your just continuing to age, it's time to find someone young who's ready to take the reins moving forward. Not only that, you mentioned the injuries piling up. For what it's worth, I mean, the last 2 full seasons of Evgeni Malkin, while it was good to see him so healthy, admittedly, he still wasn't at the top of his game. It was just age, though. It was more of a age decline. He's doing what he can with the amount of years he's already played. And they weren't terrible years. You're not totally disappointed in them, but you knew going in he wasn't the same horse that he used to be, and he still stole games every now and again. But it just wasn't the same Evgeni Malkin, and you were still playing him at second-line center. To be brutally honest, it wasn't good enough for second-line center. That's all there is to it. At least definitely this year.
I think the last 2 years has been fine.
They've been fine, and I think the issue is that you're looking at it, that we are looking at it now with this 2020 hindsight of, they were fine, missed the playoffs.
Well, yes.
Could have used someone who, or at least maybe not as second-line center, but finding other faces to help produce more, to help Malkin produce more. Let's imagine we had Michael Bunting all of last season. Probably a different outcome. But that being said, it's going to be time to find a new second-line center, whether it is moving Malkin to third or a wing. It's time to find that young replacement who will take over the position down the line. If that's Cousins, it's Cousins. If it's someone else, it's someone else. But it's about that time to make that decision, even if it's over the summer, because not sure what you're doing this season. Really not.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you're fitting in $7.1 million for Dylan Cousins, and there's not going to be retention on a 5-year deal remaining unless you work something out and get rid of one of your big contracts. But again, I'm not sure Buffalo is going to be willing to do that. I know that they run themselves not great, but I don't think they're going to run that poorly to where they're going to say, we like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, but we want to trade Cousins, so let's get Tristan Jarry's contract. Like that, it doesn't track. It's not going to happen. I will push back on one thing, though. 2 years ago, first year of the contract, Evgeni Malkin, one of the best second-line centers in the league. Last year, still among the top 10 centers in the league when you look at second-line centers. I went through that entire exercise late last season. He still finished production-wise as one of the best second-line centers in the league. This is the first year that you look at and you say, okay, the valleys are lasting a little too long. The peaks are a little bit too short. And that's why I'm starting to wholesale come to the kind of conclusion of he needs to be moved for next year, especially if he's going to be dealing with a knee injury. Hopefully this is nothing that lingers, but this is a guy that has gone through several major reconstructive knee surgeries throughout his career. This is a guy who we've talked about a couple of years ago, had surgery in his elbow and is going to need surgery in his elbow at the end of his career, but he's pushing it off so he can continue to play. This is a guy that's banged up and he's 39 years old. If the valleys continue to extend, then you're going to need to do something to try to get more out of him. And that's moving him to wing. The Penguins don't have an option right now at center that can come in and step in for him. Cody Glass looked all right yesterday, but he's not a second-line center for a good team in the National Hockey League, at least not right now. Kevin Hayes is not a second-line center. He is a decent third-line center right now, but he's not a second-line center. Blake Lizotte caps out at a third-line center. There's just nobody that can step into that role in the organization. And I think maybe not the rest of this season, because as we talked about, the rest of this season might be well and done in a moot point. But for next year, if you're trying to give them a chance in what is likely and expectedly Evgeni Malkin's last season, the best thing that you need to do is bring in a second-line center. And I don't think they're going to shell out everything for a veteran at the age of 30 or at the age of 31. I think if they're going to do it, it's going to look like a guy like Dylan Cousins. Now, whether that is Dylan Cousins or not remains to be seen, but it is going to look like a player like Dylan Cousins.
Yeah, especially considering Kyle Dubas has said that's exactly what he's looking for.
He's made it pretty clear. He's been pretty open about what he's doing, and everything that he's done has kind of followed suit. So it's not like he's lying to anybody. Yeah,
he's stated that he's looking for draft picks, prospects, and NHL-ready youngsters. Essentially, the Dylan Cousins type. Guys under 26, 25, 26, who are still on RFA deals even, who might just be falling out of favor with their team and need a revamping of their careers. Dylan Cousins fits that bill perfectly, even if the contract is a little long. But if you get him to play up to his full potential, it's a perfect deal. It's a matter of getting him to play there, though. It's a matter of getting him in the first place and then getting to play there. That's even if the trade even happens. Again, we're speaking in hypotheticals. But, yeah, he fits the bill of exactly what Kyle Dubas is looking for. And if Kyle Dubas and the Penguins are going out to look for a new second-line center, it'll be that type. The way Kyle Dubas has been looking for the Philip Tomasino types this season, I feel like over the offseason is going to be the Dylan Cousins type.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you have a list in mind, but I have a list in mind for like a top 3 or 4 trade targets as of right now. If the Penguins were to add, now, of course, we all expect them to subtract. We've talked ad nauseum about Marcus Pettersson, the fact that his passport is as good as stamped for Vancouver, right? That is essentially the most likely destination for him in a handful of weeks. Drew O'Connor has been playing better, hasn't been able to finish, but you'd have to imagine those conversations happen as well. But I wouldn't rule out the Penguins probably not going out for a bunch of names. If anything, it's maybe one, but potentially looking to add one of these players, a player like we've talked about, Cousins, a Buyer, McQuinn. My list goes as follows, and you let me know if it differs or if you have another name. But I would think top of my list right now, it's Trevor Zegras. It is. Then it's probably Bowen Byram. Then it's probably Nils Höglander. Then it's probably Dylan Cousins. And then I'd probably throw Nick Robertson at 5. That's my top 5 right now if I'm the Penguins. That's my shopping list. I understand you're going to sell more than you're going to buy, but if you're looking to add to this team for the future, all of those players are young. All of those players have more to give at the NHL level, and all of those players are in need of a fresh start. So I think those 5 are the 5 that I'm keying in on if I'm looking to add anything at this year's deadline.
Yeah, I like those names. I mean, the Penguins are going to be in sell mode, but they're going to try and do, again, you don't want to say too much what they did last year because it was one big move followed by a couple of nonchalant business decisions. But imagine the Jake Gensel deal maybe 2 to 3 times over. Of the Penguins are going to sell a player off, but getting NHL talent-ish back, plus prospects, plus picks. Just picture a Michael Bunting in return minus, essentially. A younger, less accomplished NHLer in return. Like some of the names you mentioned. I think that's a solid list, and I think a lot of those names are highlighted there that the Penguins have been sniffing around already once, I think, and could do again.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Iceberg. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Iceberg. Make sure you like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this video, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.